We won't make it. Porter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Lieutenant Dalton knew the truth the moment he checked his last magazine. 50 hostiles closing in. No cover, no backup. The extraction point flashed on his wrist. 2 clicks away, yet completely unreachable. Then a single rifle shot cracked through the valley. Clean, precise, impossible. 3 kilometers out, on a collapsing ridge no one should be standing on, Captain Elena Monroe, call sign Tempest, took aim. 39 targets, 20 seconds. One chance to save them before the mountains swallowed her alive. This is how she changed everything. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? And if you still believe courage matters, help us keep these stories alive. Gunfire tore through the morning haze. Dust rippled off the broken wall as Lieutenant Mark Dalton pressed himself down, lungs burning from smoke. Gravel jumped under each burst, like the earth was flinching with him. 20 meters away, Corporal Evans tried to drag their wounded intel officer behind a crushed truck. Evans slipped on blood. The officer didn't move. His vest was soaked through. Dalton checked the ridge again. Dark silhouettes flickered between rocks. Muzzle flashes blinked from 2 angles, then a third. They weren't surrounded yet, but the circle was closing fast. Echo 6, status? Porter called over radio. Static drowned half the words. Dalton steadied his breathing, forced himself to answer. Pinned. Ammo low. Enemy climbing in from the west ridge. A mortar hit somewhere behind them. The blast kicked dust into the air in a thick curtain. Evans shouted something. Dalton only caught one word through the ringing in his ears. They're flanking! Dalton rolled to the edge of the wall, fired a short burst, and ducked back. Brass clattered at his knees. He checked his mag. Almost empty. 1 reload left. That was all. This was supposed to be a clean pullout. In and out. No noise. No resistance. But someone had leaked the route. Someone always did. Now his team, 5 operators from Task Unit Orion, was stuck in a bowl of shattered stone, with more than 50 hostiles moving like a slow tide around them. Evans staggered up to Dalton with the wounded officer over his shoulder. He needs extraction now. He won't last 10 minutes. Dalton nodded. 10 minutes. They wouldn't last 5. Porter slid in beside him, face streaked with soot, eyes steady despite the chaos. We can't hold. Not from this angle. They're already on the North Rocks. Dalton knew that tone. The tone of a man calculating odds he didn't want to say out loud. Porter finally did. Sir, we won't make it. The words hit harder than the mortar. Dalton didn't respond at first. He looked at the map on his wrist display. The extraction point glowed bright green, only 2.5 clicks away. A mocking little dot. A promise he couldn't reach. Dalton swallowed hard. He wanted to say something heroic, something like "we push anyway," or "we don't leave anyone." But reality pressed on him like the weight of the collapsing wall at his back. Evans tried to stop the bleeding on the intel officer's side. His hands trembled. Porter scanned the ridge again. The radio crackled with half-choked screams from a different unit nearby. The trap had closed. And then, a pause. A strange quiet between gunshots. Dalton frowned. He looked up to the distant cliffs on the far side of the valley. A faint shimmer of movement. Too far for him to make sense of. Too far for any friendly unit to be posted. That side was unstable rock, marked off limits on every map. Another shot echoed across the valley. A single, sharp crack. Clean. Cold. Deliberate. One of the enemy gunners collapsed. No warning. No ricochet. Just dropped. Dalton blinked. Porter turned his head sharply. Evans froze over the wounded officer. Another crack. A second hostile fell, this one still aiming a grenade launcher at Dalton's position. Another. A third collapsed before the first even hit the ground. This wasn't random. This wasn't luck. This was precision. Dalton grabbed the radio. Unknown shooter. Confirm friendlies on the northwest ridge. Static. Then a woman's voice. Calm. Steady. Not even breathing hard. Echo 6. This is Tempest. Eyes on your position. Mark your friendlies. Dalton stared at the radio. Porter mouthed the name like a myth. Tempest? She's not supposed to be anywhere near this sector. But the shots kept coming. And each one landed like a scalpel found its mark. Dalton risked a glance over the wall. Another hostile dropped, weapon clattering down the rocks. The next shot blew apart a machine gun mount before the enemy crew could fire. The impossible was happening in front of him. Someone 3 kilometers away on terrain that should have collapsed hours ago was carving a path through the enemy line with inhuman precision. Porter looked at Dalton. For the first time since the ambush began, he didn't look defeated. He looked alive. "Sir, if that's Tempest," Dalton didn't let him finish. He knew the stories. Everyone did. One sniper, one impossible vantage point, one storm of bullets when all hope was gone. He tightened his grip on his rifle. Then we hold, just a little longer. A fourth shot echoed across the valley. Then a fifth. Then a rhythm. Cold, fast, unbroken. Dalton exhaled. The tide had shifted. The storm had arrived. Captain Elena Monroe lay flat on a slab of shale, barely thicker than her boot. The ridge trembled every few seconds, shifting under her weight. Stones skittered over the edge and vanished into the fog below. The wind came in violent bursts. Not gusts, shoves, hard enough to tear at her gear and claw at her rifle sling. The air tasted of smoke and burnt metal drifting up from the valley. Her rifle, a custom-built 340 Titan Magnum, rested on a bipod hammered into unstable rock. The matte steel was scratched, worn, and familiar. She knew every inch of it the way others knew a favorite song. She licked dry lips and adjusted the scope. Distance to target, 2,740 meters. Air density low. Temperature dropping. Wind oscillating between 32 and 41 knots. A nightmare for most shooters. For her, it was numbers and rhythm. Behind her, a frayed anchor line clung to a cracked boulder. A precaution, not a guarantee. She had already told her spotter to fall back when the ridge began to fracture. Lieutenant Rhodes argued, but she didn't budge. One of them had to survive to report what happened. She made the choice for both. She wasn't here for glory. She wasn't here because she loved the fight. Her younger brother, Jonah, had enlisted at 19. Smart, bright, too trusting. He died in a raid that should never have happened. Wrong intel, wrong timing, wrong leadership. Elena carried that weight through every deployment, every shot, every breath. She swore no one else's brother would die waiting for help that arrived too late. The ridge groaned again. A warning. Elena ignored it. Through the crosshairs, she saw Dalton's team pinned against the wall of splintered concrete. She could read their posture from here, tight, desperate, bracing for the inevitable. Enemy fighters crept closer from ledges and broken windows. A disciplined push. She exhaled slowly. The world narrowed to the reticle. The storm inside her stilled. Her first shot cracked across the valley. A clean hit to the rifleman about to fire an RPG. The man collapsed backward, the launcher spitting its rocket uselessly skyward. Second shot. A support gunner jerked sideways and dropped his weapon. Third. A man behind a barricade caught a round through the shoulder and fell out of sight. Elena adjusted 1/10 mil left. Wind kicked again. Stone dust blew across her cheek. The enemy still didn't understand they were being hit from miles away. Their heads turned in the wrong direction, their nerves already unraveling. Panic eroded discipline faster than bullets. She squeezed again. Fourth shot hit a machine gun mount, splintering the bracket. The gun tumbled down the ridge and slammed into rock. Fifth shot clipped a team leader shouting orders. His men froze without him. Dalton's people began crawling to new cover, seizing the sliver of opportunity she carved open. They stayed low, smart, disciplined. She liked that. It made the math easier. The rifle kicked against her shoulder in a familiar thud. Each casing bounced down the rock like tiny bells. Her breathing stayed steady, heartbeat slow, the kind of slow that only came from years of training and a mind built for pressure. The ridge rumbled again, more violent this time. Pebbles rattled around her elbows. A larger fracture spidered across the stone inches from her boot. She noted it, but she didn't move. Her next shot ripped through the side window of an old storage shack. A sniper inside slumped forward, scope cracking against the sill. His spotter ducked too late. More shapes appeared below, enemy reinforcements from the eastern gully. At least a dozen. They hustled in pairs, searching for the unseen threat cutting down their line. Elena watched their patterns, watched their angles, let the numbers settle into place. She fired again. One dropped, then another. Then two more. The enemy finally reacted. They scattered, firing blindly into the cliffs, sending dust and sparks into the air. None of them came close. Elena cycled the bolt with smooth, practiced motion. She shifted to a new vantage, inching sideways along the unstable ledge. A few stones crumbled beneath her elbow and clattered into the void. The whole mountain seemed to groan, like it resented her presence. She didn't stop. The team below needed the window. She needed to widen it. More hostiles moved behind a rusted fuel tanker, using it as cover, thinking it was safe. It wasn't. Elena angled the shot. She didn't aim for them. She aimed for the tank's lower seam. One round. A flash. An eruption of fire that lit the whole flank in orange. 3 silhouettes staggered into the open, blinded by flames. 3 more shots. 3 bodies down. Elena blinked sweat from her lashes, checked her remaining rounds, calculated her next angle. Dalton's team had a chance now, a real one. She lifted her cheek from the stock just long enough to mutter a breath almost too faint to hear. "Hold on. I'm not done." And she wasn't. Elena steadied her rifle as the valley shifted into chaos. The enemy line fractured under her assault, men scattering into different pockets of rubble. Their confusion bought Dalton's team a sliver of breathing room. Dalton pushed his squad forward, dragging the wounded intel officer toward better cover. Porter laid bursts into the ridge to keep heads down. Evans signaled when the path cleared. Elena fired again. Another hostile dropped near a broken staircase. 2 more fell before their rifles even lifted. The radio buzzed weakly near her elbow. She heard Dalton's voice through static, urgent but controlled. "Tempest, keep carving that path." "We're moving." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. More enemies rushed around the far corner of a half-collapsed building. They sprinted low, guns ready, closing in from a blind angle. Elena adjusted 2 clicks right and fired 3 rounds in a clean rhythm. All 3 attackers fell before reaching their mark. The ridge trembled beneath her stomach. She felt the vibration through her elbows. A low groan rolled under the rock, deeper than before. The mountain was telling her something, warning her, pushing back. She pushed the thought aside. Dalton's team was halfway across the kill zone now. They needed the rest of the way. She caught movement near a ruined vehicle. A heavy machine gun crew rushed into position with a crate of ammo. They were fast and coordinated. Dangerous. Elena exhaled and took the shot. The gunner collapsed over the weapon. The loader dropped his crate and stumbled backward. Dalton sprinted his team past the opening just in time. Then the ridge lurched. Hard. A brutal shift, like something deep beneath had snapped. Elena's elbows slipped. Her rifle skidded forward. Small stones cascaded down the slope. She dug her boots into the fractured surface and braced, heart thumping once, then slowing again to her trained rhythm. She reached for her anchor line. The knot held, but the boulder it was tied to didn't look as loyal. Her radio crackled again. "Tempest, what's your status?" Dalton asked. She kept her voice even. "Stable enough. Move faster." Another tremor hit. This one stronger. The ledge beneath her split in 2 branching cracks. Elena made a decision in one breath. She fired her last shots to cover Dalton's final sprint toward the eastern rocks. Each round struck home a rifleman near the drainage pit, an officer screaming orders, a grenadier lifting his arm. Dalton's team broke free of the choke point. They disappeared behind a low wall, dragging their wounded inside a sheltered corner. She had done what she came for. The ridge finally gave way. A roar of stone and gravity. Elena felt the world tilt. The ground dropped under her torso. Her anchor line snapped tight, whipping her sideways. She tumbled down the slope, bouncing off jagged rock. Pain burst through her ribs. Her rifle spun away into the void. She clawed at broken surfaces until her fingers found a crack between 2 boulders. Her body jammed into the narrow space. She couldn't move her left arm. Breath hitched between clenched teeth. Above her, the ledge she'd been lying on was gone, swept into the valley in a cloud of dust and thunder. The mountain settled, leaving her trapped in a cage of stone. Her radio hung by a frayed wire, barely intact. Dalton's voice reached her through static. "Tempest, answer. We saw the collapse." She inhaled sharply. "I'm alive, but not for long if you don't move." Dalton's reply was instant. "We're coming." She tried to stop him. "Negative. Terrain's unstable. Get your men out." But the radio cut. He wasn't listening. Dalton and Porter scrambled up the lower slope, dodging falling debris. Evans stayed behind with the intel officer, covering the valley. Dalton moved like a man driven by something heavier than orders. He found Elena's rifle first, wedged between rocks, then the blood trail, then the crack where she lay pinned. He knelt beside her, breath trembling. "We've got you." Porter jammed a metal rod under the upper boulder, using leverage to widen the gap. The stone groaned, shifting dangerously. Dust rained onto Elena's face. She clenched her jaw as Dalton pulled her free. Pain shot down her side. She almost blacked out, but Dalton slapped her cheek lightly. "Stay with us." They lifted her onto Porter's shoulder and ran. Behind them, the mountain roared again. A fresh wave of rock thundered down the slope. Boulders bounced past as they sprinted, each one seconds from crushing them. Dalton grabbed Porter's vest and yanked him right as a slab the size of a truck smashed where they'd been. They slid down the scree, half falling, half running. A cloud of dust chased them like a living thing. Dalton didn't look back. He only ran harder. They broke free of the collapse zone just as the last of the ridge fell. The sound echoed across the valley like the end of something ancient. Dalton doubled over, gasping, chest heaving. Porter set Elena down gently. She was pale, shaking, bleeding heavily. Dalton activated his beacon. No guarantees, no promises, but a chance. Minutes passed like hours. Then, a distant hum. Growing louder, a helicopter sliced through the storm clouds, descending fast. Its side gunner opened fire to clear the landing zone. Dust spiraled in violent circles as it touched down. Medics rushed out, hoisting Elena onto a stretcher. Dalton helped secure her straps. Her hand shot up weakly and grabbed his vest. She whispered, barely audible, "Why? Come back." Dalton leaned in close. "Because you didn't quit on us." They loaded her into the helicopter. Dalton stepped back. The rotors surged. Then a scream over the comms, "RPG inbound." A streak of smoke cut through the rain. The rocket arced toward the aircraft. The gunner shouted warnings. Elena, half-conscious, reached for the sidearm strapped to a medic's thigh. Her fingers closed around the grip. She pulled herself up with one arm and leaned toward the open door. Dalton stared in disbelief. Porter froze mid-step. Elena took one breath. Calm, focused. She fired at the rocket's rear fin. A perfect hit. The RPG spiraled off course and exploded harmlessly in the air. The shockwave lit the valley in a short-lived sun. The gunner yelled over the roar. "Whoever did that, holy hell!" Dalton just watched, speechless, awestruck. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Tempest into the storm. The world returned slowly. Not with gunfire, not with falling stone. Just a quiet beeping beside her bed. Elena blinked at white ceiling tiles and the blurred shape of a hanging IV bag. Her ribs felt like shattered glass. Her left arm was wrapped in a fresh cast. A nurse stepped into view. Calm, efficient. He checked her vitals, adjusted the drip. "You made it, Captain." Barely. She tried to speak, but her throat felt raw. He offered her water, then left her to rest. The room fell silent again. Outside the door, she heard faint announcements in the hall. A helicopter landing somewhere near the far wing. Metallic wheels rolling across tile. Life moving forward, while she floated between pain and memory. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she saw the ridge collapse again. Stone swallowing the space where she had lain moments before. Then, she saw Dalton's face. Porter's hands dragging her free. The blur of rotors as the helicopter lifted her into the storm. She inhaled sharply. It hurt, but it meant she was alive. Hours passed before the door opened again. Dalton walked in wearing a clean uniform and exhaustion around his eyes. He nodded once, the kind of nod that carried gratitude instead of words. "Good to see you awake, Tempest." She managed a faint smirk. Still alive? He sat beside her chair. Thanks to you. He set something down gently on the bedside table. Her rifle. Damaged. Scratched. Burned along the barrel from heat. But intact. Her breath caught. You found it. He nodded. Didn't want you waking up without it. She ran her good hand along the stock. Every dent meant something. Every scrape had a story. Dalton leaned back. They counted, 39 confirmed. He hesitated before adding, but the pilots swear the RPG shot was the impossible one. Elena looked away, embarrassed. He didn't let her hide. You saved us, Elena. All of us. Footsteps echoed outside. Voices. Then a knock. The door opened. Commander Harlan Reeves, Base CO, stepped in with a small case under his arm. He studied Elena with a mix of sternness and respect. Captain Monroe, he said, your actions saved Task Unit Orion and prevented a full-scale loss. On behalf of the command, we are awarding you the Silver Valor Cross. He opened the case. The metal gleamed against dark velvet. Elena stared at it. She didn't reach for it. Reeves didn't force it into her hand, he simply set it beside the rifle. Rest well, Captain. The unit owes you more than they can ever repay. He left, without ceremony. Silence returned. Elena stared at the metal. The shine felt heavy. Dalton watched her carefully. You okay? She nodded, though it wasn't true. Heroics had never been her goal. He stood to leave. Before he reached the door, she stopped him. Mark! He turned. Thank you for coming back. Dalton offered a half-smile. You didn't leave us behind. We weren't about to leave you. After he left, she reached for the small duffel bag stored under her bed. There was a metal tin inside, thin, dented, with a faded name etched across the lid. Jonna Monroe. She opened her laptop and started typing. She always wrote when the pain got too loud. Jonah, I survived another mission. Barely. Her fingers paused over the keys. I saved people this time. Not because I'm fearless, but because you taught me what courage looks like. You held on for 8 long minutes so others could escape. I held on today because of you. Her eyes watered, but she kept typing. They call me Tempest now, but I'm still just your sister, trying to do one good thing at a time. She saved the file, closed the laptop, wiped her eyes on her sleeve. The next afternoon, she was cleared for light movement. Light by military standards still meant pain in every step. She walked slow but steady into the courtyard. The entire Task Unit Orion stood waiting. 5 operators in a tight line, uniforms crisp, faces solemn. When she stopped in front of them, they snapped to attention and saluted in perfect unison. Dalton spoke for the unit. Captain Elena Monroe, call sign Tempest. On behalf of every life you saved, we salute you. Her throat tightened. She returned the salute with her good arm. It hurt, but she didn't drop it. That night, she packed her gear. Her arm was still in a cast, her ribs still wrapped, but she moved with purpose. A sealed envelope waited on her bunk, stamped with a symbol she recognized only from rumors. Project AEGS. Confidential Deployment Notice. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single line. Your presence is requested for an operation where precision decides the fate of many. Elena stared at the words. A familiar pull rose in her chest. A promise she hadn't finished keeping. She picked up her rifle case, clipped the latches, stood tall. The storm wasn't over. Not for her. Not yet. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.